joining us now to make sense of these stories and more. In this studio with us is Mr. Darlington Agumo. He is a lawyer right here in Nigeria and also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Mr. Darlington, a very good afternoon to you and thank you for joining the conversation.
Good afternoon, David.
Also joining the conversation this afternoon virtually is Ms. Mazi Amobi Hegboro. He is a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Very good afternoon to you, Mazi, and thank you for joining the conversation this afternoon. All right, then. I understand that he's not joined the conversation yet, but also joined us virtually to make sense of these stories and more is Folarin Ajayi. Folarin Ajayi is the senior reporter, Edu Times Africa. Well, a very good afternoon to you, Folarin, and thank you for joining the conversation this afternoon. Oh, well, I don't know if you can hear me, but I would like us to establish vocal communication first because I could barely hear you.
Yes, good afternoon. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, then, fantastic. Thank you so very much for joining the conversation. All right, let me start off with you, Folarin. Coming from the backdrop of the new disarticulation policy by the federal government, I mean, looking at all of this holistically, what do you make of this particular development? Because quite a number of Nigerian parents at this time have not fully understood the decision by the federal government. But from your perspective as a senior reporter when it comes to education, what do you make of this story? And then do you think at this point the Nigerian government has thought after this particular policy before trying to, start it off in the first place?
All right, many thanks. So let me start by saying that the federal government is proposing to phase out the policy that separates junior secondary schools and senior secondary schools into different, and senior secondary schools into different administrative units. So instead of operating separately with different principals, different faculties or facilities, the government wants a more integrated secondary school system to make it easier for students to progress from junior secondary school to senior secondary school. Now, the government is saying that the current system has not achieved its intended purpose. So according to the Minister of Education, he said more than 20 million children are dropouts. That is, before reaching the junior secondary schools, we have over 20 million students who are dropouts. So there is also a mismatch between the number of primary and junior secondary schools, leading to overcrowding in the junior secondary school, while the many senior secondary school facilities remain underutilized. So the reform is intended to improve transition rates and make better use of existing infrastructure. And for me, as a policy writer, I agree if this is exactly what the government wants to do, to integrate the system and make it one. This is fine.
Okay, now still staying with you. Now, looking at this particular policy, you did mention earlier that, of course, the Minister of Education, I'm talking about Tunji Alausa, clearly stated that over 20 million Nigerian students haven't been able to get to the SS classes as a result of this old policy. Now, do you or are you privy to the data at which the minister used in clarifying these facts? Because it is very imperative that we speak on data. Now, looking at that development, we also know that infrastructural deficit is on another level. So is there the possibility that the minister is just, like some opposition figures are saying, they're just trying to have a major policy somersault with this particular one?
All right, many thanks for that. I want to start by saying that we always politicize everything in Nigeria, and that is very wrong. According to verifiable stats, we have over 18.3 million to 20 million out of school children in Nigeria.
Right.
And then that sometimes when policy writers like myself and others come out to say we have millions of students, millions of children out of school, you say that we are trying to speak against the government. Now the Minister of Education is saying that there are over 20 million out of school children, and people are saying that the minister does not know what he's saying. No, it shouldn't be. So the report clearly states that we have no fewer in Nigeria precisely, no fewer than 10.2 million children that are not in school at the primary level. That is at the primary level. So UNICEF is also saying that there are over 10 million children that are not in any schools in Nigeria. So what are we saying? We are saying that what the government needs to also do is find a way of getting these children out of the streets and get them into the classroom. And then if we can solve the out of school children problem that we have in sub-Saharan Africa, especially Nigeria, and some of the crises that we have is already solved.
Okay, now looking at the economical implication of all of this, the dropout crisis truly is bleeding Nigeria dry, particularly on productivity, brain drain, and it's a major insecurity that we have in our hands. Now, as it stands, would you also admit that the 6334 UBE experiment was, on one hand, a corrupt failure? Because this again has been a conversation that we are not looking at, particularly on the part of quite a number of the students getting out of school, even though we keep funding some of these systems.
Let me be very clear. I'm going to say this on and off air. It is simply that each government comes with its own policy, and that is so sad. Each government churn out different policies at different time when it comes to policy issues in Nigeria. One of the issues that I have is that when we bring out these policies, do we consult the education stakeholders? When I mean the education stakeholders, talking about, do we look at everyone concerned? Now, to say that the basic system of education that we've been using is a total failure will not be something that I would also like. It's been unfair. The crisis we have is simply that we have so many children who are not going to school. If the government feels that a change in policy is simply the best way to solve the problem, fine, let's see how the policy will be implemented. But to say that the 634 policy is a failure, I will not agree to that.
Yes. Now, again, let me still stay with you before I bring it to the studio, because Barrister is here to also help us chime his voice.
Yeah,
Staying with you, some
some
European countries have extended, and I carefully use this word, extended compulsory education, and of course have a way of tracking the success of educational system. Now, do you have an idea how much of the Almajiri schools have been shut down as a result of importance attributed to our education?